The kingdom survived, largely from revenues charged to the Muslims from around the world who make the annual pilgrimage, or Hajj, to Saudi Arabia's holy sites.
He charged Muslims to make the Hajj to Mecca. They had to pay a fee to be allowed into Saudi Arabia, and that's how he lived, frugally.
This was a personal license to drill oil that Ibn Saud had granted in his lands. It was his money. And to this day, there is a sense in which the House of Saud consider the oil to be their own personal property.
Said to him, "Your Majesty, why don't you go out into the desert, do a little hunting and relax, and we have a wonderful guest house." So they thought that was a good idea. When the king landed, one of the things they were unloading from the plane was liqueur and hard whiskey. Well, we took a look at this, and where did they put the stuff? They put the stuff under the king's bed in the guest house. So of course, we were kind of shocked. And during the stay, we could see that they would drink this stuff straight. But it was kept very quiet.
King Saud's drinking was kept quiet in part because the king was an important asset for the Americans.
Saudi Arabia is a dictatorship managed by a democracy.
The new king, Saud, eventually built 10 palaces and in 1 year ran up $5 million in food bills alone. He gave solid gold watches to visitors, watches sporting his own portrait. They became known as Mickey Sauds.
Saud was known as a mismanager. He was not what we'd call a successful manager by modern standards. The country ran into huge deficits. He had a reputation for being more interested in the leisurely lifestyle than in the running of a country.
President Kennedy supposedly said to Faisal, "Your Majesty, you're going to deny this, but there are slaves in your country, and I want them freed." And they were freed as a result of this meeting.
An austere figure with a surprising past.
I understand that when he was a young man, he was a bit of a libertine at times. I can't say how much or just where, but that was what the stories were.
In his youth, Faisal was known to live the high life, even on a humble picnic with friends.
Oh, that was hysterical. That really was hysterical. And we prepared beef hot dogs and all the fixings for any picnic. And we went to the park in limousines yet. And I'll never forget Prince Faisal got a hot dog bun, put the hot dog, and caviar and whale salt on top of it.
This was a trend that would be repeated again. Princes who break Islamic laws by drinking and carousing, who later become devout kings. Faisal soon became one of the most popular monarchs the region had ever known, an uncontroversial and little-known prince named Khalid.
He became king as a sort of a compromise candidate because a lot of people thought Fahad was the de facto strongman at the time, even under King Faisal, because Fahad was sort of the main advisor to King Faisal. But Fahad, because of his reputation as a playboy and whatnot, did not always have the support of the rest of the family. So Khalid, who was thought by many people as not wanting to be king at all, sort of was made king as a peacemaker, as an interim personality until things could be sorted out.
In 1979, militant fundamentalists took over the mosque in Mecca. Saudi forces killed over 100 people.
Taking over Mecca was truly for them a wake-up call. This cannot continue solving problems like this. The Saudis, remarkably, by the way, for a Middle Eastern country, backed away from violence.
It was very successful for the Saudis and successful for us. The Soviets were defeated. And all these young mujahideen, paid and trained by the Saudis and to some degree paid and trained by us, were also victorious. But actions have consequences. How do you reintegrate young warriors when they come back victorious from a war. They looked and they saw, instead of a country ruled by shepherd kings living austere Muslim lives, they saw a country that was run by and for the benefit of the royal family, and where there was a gap between what the royal family said and what it actually did.
With Khalid's death, the crown prince Fahd became king. By reputation, he seemed the opposite of the austere Muslim that the Wahhabist populace expected of their leader. Word had it that he had once lost $6 million in a single night in Monte Carlo. He owned yachts, an estate in Spain.
I think it added to the way people saw him as someone who was not as self-disciplined and with the same inner checks that someone like Faisal so totally had.
You had this population explosion, more and more people who were needing education and needing health services, needing housing, and needing jobs. And the Saudis just were not producing the jobs that they needed in order to keep the population, you know, satisfied.
يعطيك العافية يا أختي، الحمد لله على سلامتكم.
الله يسلمك.
شو صار معكم؟
والله يا أخو الدور انهدمت عروسنا واحنا في قلبها، أولاد صغار وكبار، بقول حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل على كل الحكومات العربية. إلهي دورنا وأولادنا واحنا في قلب الدور.
أنتم ما قدرتوا تطلعوا يعني؟
ولا قدرنا نطلع ولا عطونا أصحاب التنزيل ولا حشي، اليهود الله يقدم عليهم صاروخ بتفضل علينا فروسنا.
هذا الصواب عندكم؟
كلنا واحنا صرنا نتلبد في الحيطان لحد ما صرنا نجري ونكبر ونطلع من طول الحيطان وطلعنا بعجوبة من الدار والصواريخ فوق روسنا. حسبنا الله